Welcome to another edition of Council Connections. This program was produced to bring the council to you. Each month we bring a council member into our studio to let them tell you what is happening in and around the city and what you can look forward to for the upcoming month. Well, we are very pleased to have with us today Honorable Mike Leszcz, the at-large council member for the city of Laurel. Thank you so much, sir, for coming on. I know there's a lot to talk about, and we really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule.
It's a pleasure being here.
Let's get to the nitty-gritty.
Sure.
We're right in the middle of budget time. So what is going on with the budget that we can let the residents know? I mean, if they're not watching the work sessions and everything, you can fill them in right here on what's happening.
Well, the mayor and the staff have been meeting along with the council, a couple of council members, to come up with the budget that falls within the revenue stream and maintain services. You know, the things that the issues that the mayor and the administration and the council look at are we providing the services? Are we treating the employees right? Are we contributing an adequate amount or more to the pension plan? Those are all things that enter into the process. Mm-hmm. We all have things we'd like to do,
right,
like to add in. But until we get the revenue stream pumped up again, and there are some things that are happening that will in fact add to the revenue stream, we're going to have to put those on the shelf. And they tend to be minor things. They're not service-based, they're not employee-based, but things that would be nice to have in the city. We're still maintaining streets. We're making an effort to increase our programs in the city, and not just maintain, but improve them, and that's important. When I talk about the revenue stream is made up of several large sources: real estate taxes and income and other taxes. So we have the real estate tax that we assess, and it is not on anybody's mind at this point that we would increase the tax. A couple of years back, we decreased it by a penny.
Mm-hmm. I remember.
But people need to remember, we had a shopping center that went, the Laurel Shopping Center, the mall, that went from generating $900,000 in tax revenue to the city to about $100,000. And even though it's built up, the revenue stream doesn't start right up again.
Right.
So as those stores are assessed, they come online, they'll generate revenue, so we'll see an increase in the tax stream from the town center at Laurel. And there's some other things happening, the C Street flats.
Right.
Okay, that'll generate revenue. All of these things tend to add revenue. Fred Frederick built a beautiful new service building up on the hill. Mm-hmm. All of those things add to the revenue stream and to salaries around the state where the people in the city of Laurel work. As they increase, there'll be a slight increase in the income tax sharing that goes on. Now, the one revenue stream that's an issue is still the highway user shared revenue from the state.
Right.
We went from hundreds of thousands of dollars down to $90,000. And I'm sure that the governor is struggling with that. Mm-hmm. But it still remains to be seen what will happen with the shared revenues from the gas taxes. Not that I advocate an increased gas tax, but even the current gas taxes, we're not getting our fair share in the city of Laurel. Neither are other municipalities.
Right.
So it's a problem because we've got over 35 miles of streets in the city of Laurel we have to maintain. And that includes all the potholes we have right now from the snows. So in addition to normal maintenance that comes every 20 to 35 years, you have to go back and you have to take care of potholes. I will mention one thing that our DPW staff does a wonderful job. They make do with what they have. They save money on some of our projects with some value engineering because we have an engineer on staff. And those are then turned back over into other capital improvement projects, primarily the streets.
Right.
That's the big one that everybody sees.
That is a big one,
Right,
yes.
right.
And with, I mean, it's, budget time is also, it's a balancing act too, because like you're talking about, you've got these new stores from the town center coming online, and you're trying to figure out where the, what are we going to be pulling in compared to what's going to be going out. So, I mean, you do a fantastic job with getting that done and coming up with a balanced budget.
Well, Michelle Saylor and her department, Michelle is constantly on top of what are the estimates we're getting from the state. Do we need to adjust those estimates? Somebody once asked me, why do you have so many budget amendments? And what our citizens need to realize, we must balance the budget every year.
Right.
Okay, if we have a deficit because of increased snowstorm costs or a new roof on the municipal center because it's falling apart, then we've got to find the money and balance the budget. We can't rob Peter to pay Paul. We're not in that situation. We're using a finite amount of funds to cover all of these expenses, whether they're expected or they're unexpected.
And the council, the mayor, the city staff all do a great job of making sure that happens.
Right.
They use the residents' monies to the best of their abilities.
Well, as I've always said, I don't like to pay taxes. I'm like everybody else. But if I can see where they're going, and they're going to maintain services in the city, maintain the roads, make sure we've got a safe environment to live in.
Great programs, I mean, yeah.
Yes, so all of those things, in other words, it's sort of a lockbox effect here in the city, where we have the funds, we put them towards some issue, and then we sort of lock them up. And you've got to, and the mayor's got to work very hard, and the council's got to work very hard if we have that unexpected expense.
Excellent. All right, so from the budget, that's a great explanation. Hopefully people will take that and learn from that, because there is a lot that goes into it. And from the budget, let's go into economic development. Woohoo! There's a lot of that going on.
There is, as I indicated, Town Center Laurel represents, between the land and the buildings that have gone up, somewhere in the neighborhood of $130 million. The restaurants seem to be doing okay. Time will tell. If they don't do well, then they'll shutter up and somebody else will come. I understand Oshkosh Bagosh for kids' clothes is coming.
Oh, excellent. I remember those as a kid. I have those. I loved them.
And somebody said, well, why so many restaurants? Well, restaurants, if you go to these different town centers, Watt Chapel, they tend to have a large number of places for people to get out with their families and eat.
Right.
And in Laurel, we've always done well with restaurants. People go, they eat, they go home because they're going to work the next day.
Right.
So it's a time saver, and more importantly, it generates jobs. Those restaurants have a large number of jobs. When Old Navy moved here, a large number of the people with the closed Old Navy came with the new store.
Really?
And those provide jobs for, high school age kids, kids in college. People who don't have jobs, they're in between the jobs. They're professionals, but geez, they got laid off over on 270 somewhere.
Right.
They got to have a job. There's nothing worse than sitting at home without a job. You've got to feel some value of worth, and you do that when you're working. So again, all of those restaurants and everything, they're all providing jobs over there. We've got the movies seem to be doing great. I've been twice. I'm sorry, I've been twice.
Everybody loves the seats.
And my 5-year-old grandson, he sat in the seat for 3 movies the whole time. All you had to do was give him a bag of popcorn.
And he was happy.
He was very happy. And again, there's a good mix of movies, from the drama and the action down to the Paddington Bear.
Kids and romantic.
Yeah. So there's a good mix of movies over there. And again, theaters have traditionally done well in Laurel. If they maintain the technology or upgrade the technology. And again, this is a very, very nice theater arrangement.
Like you said, it makes for a great family night. You go out,
Yes.
you have dinner, then you go to a movie.
Or after you come out of the movie, the kids go down to the pick your one of 29 flavors of yogurt.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, you know, there's just a lot of things to do.
Tell me about measured and managed development in the city.
When I was on the Planning Commission, one thing comes to mind. When I was on the Planning Commission, the Goody property was vacant. It was the Goody family owned it at that time. And Frank Asula came to me and he says, we got to change the zoning there.
Right.
I said, why is that, Frank? Because it was in the county, it wasn't in the city. It was all zoned for high-density housing, which is apartments.
Really?
The whole thing.
Okay.
And Frank said to me, Frank said, look, he says, you got to manage development. You can't let it happen. You got to think about it, you got to contemplate it, you got to manage it. So managed development is what I see at Town Center Laurel, what I see at Contee and Route 1, the shopping center down there, what I see at the C Street Flats. You have a changing type of requirement for both retail, commercial, and housing. I don't work at home. I still work, and I work in an office setting every day. So I drive to the office, I get out. But on the other hand, I have family where both my son and his wife, they work at home. Okay, and
If
they
you're
can
lucky
do that.
enough, right,
Well,
yeah.
they can do it.
Right.
They're self-disciplined. In their job, they don't have a requirement to meet face-to-face with people. I have that requirement in my job. So what you see is a lot of these apartments that are going up, it's live-work. So the people will live and work in that apartment, in their home.
Right.
Or there's still a move on, and it will probably come eventually, to put some measure of office in a lower level of a mixed-use development with apartments,
I could see
so
that.
that the people that live in the apartments could then walk downstairs to their office. Maybe they're an insurance broker, maybe they're a real estate broker, I don't know, but those are things that come to mind. The other thing I heard, we talk about telework, people working at home.
Yes, telework
Telework,
is big,
okay.
big right now.
It started out as telecommuting, now it's teleworking. National League of Cities, several months ago, I was in a class with an individual, and I thought about what the individual presenting said. He said, many people today they want to telework, but they don't want to telework at home alone. And what he meant was, and I noticed it in the hotel we were staying in the lobby of this Comfort Suites or Comfort Inn or whatever it was, there was 21 workspaces in the lobby with stools, place to plug your computer in, and they were filled all the time. And then I looked in the coffee shop, which was a Starbucks attached to this.
Right.
There was people sitting in there working all the time. They weren't talking to anybody, but it's just the social requirement for them to be around other individuals.
Right.
For these people, they were being very productive. They're tapping away. One of them had a camera in their computer, and I noticed that they had somebody's picture up, so they were talking to that person.
Right.
They had the headset on with the headphones. They weren't bothering anybody. So I think that a certain part of the new generations, and I don't want to categorize or
Right.
generalize, they don't want to go to an office. They don't want to commute, even if you've got public transportation. But if they're going to stay at home and work, they want to work in somewhere where they can rub shoulders with somebody,
That
not talk to
connection
them.
with people, right.
Yeah, and I think so those are some of the things we have to look for in our economic development, redevelopment. And C Street Flats, it'll be interesting to see how that turns out. People have said to me, that's an awful lot of apartments. I said,
Right.
you bet. But apparently the developer and the city, we felt it was worth a try. Let's try it. Let's see if it works. We've still got the Mark Central project that's not done. it is a constant effort to keep pushing. I have
Keep it in the forefront.
Well,
yeah.
There have been many letters sent, and we're still working that issue. We've got all the development taking place over off Van Dusen Road now. Mixed use. There's a proposed 100-unit senior citizen facility over there. It'll be you know, live independently but go to a dining room type of thing. So again, there's a lot of things happening in the city of Laurel. And again, let me come back to the revenue stream. That all enhances the revenue stream, and it actually reflects well on the value of real estate in the city of Laurel.
And you all are managing this growth.
We're managing it. We're not letting it happen willy-nilly. The Main Street, the Community Redevelopment Authority, I'm no longer on that. Donna Crary now is the chair. There's 4 members of the community that sit with her. As you know, we bought the theater. The theater is a wreck. We cannot go in the theater. It has mold, it has asbestos, they've ripped pipes out of the walls.
Just sat too long without anything happening, and
Well,
it just fell apart, right?
It's in bad shape, so we'll see what happens with that. We also bought what's termed the Quill lot next to BB&T Bank to maintain that space for use by the city. It's been leased back to the city. And I know the CRA is looking at other properties on Main Street with the idea that they would then take some action and then turn around and sell it to a developer. You know, do an RFP and ask a developer, what are you going to do with this property? The lower end of Main Street has suffered a bit.
Right.
Cooper and Cummings did a good job with Patuxent Place at the upper end of Main Street.
Right.
And again, that was managed development. If people remember, there was the Marbury's, Judge Marbury's house was there that burned up. They tried to move it, and it burned up. But there was also 3 or 4 old houses that were falling apart. And Cooper Cummings came in. They made a proposal to the city. We now have the village zone along Main Street. And I think that's turned out pretty well. Somebody's asked me, aren't there some empty places up there? I said, well, yeah, it's turning over. It's been almost 30 years. So properties turn over. And again, so we're managing the development within the city. We do not want development that doesn't add something to the city.
Right.
It has to add to the ambiance. It has to add to the economic fabric of the city, and more importantly, the people that live in the city, the citizens. They've got to use whatever comes with that development.
How will this make the city of Laurel a great place to live, work, and play in?
Yes.
I mean, basically in a nutshell, right?
That's right. And we'll probably see, although yesterday was not a good example with the overturned tractor and the tanker, but the Conterra Road, or the old Conti Road intersection, has now been renamed Conti, or Conterra.
Conterra, right.
Conterra.
Conterra Drive, Conterra Road, yeah.
That will relieve some traffic eventually through the city, I believe, as people get their traffic patterns straightened away. It's still a tough commute through the city in the evening. But we're going to see some widening of 198, at least to the bridge at Fort Meade.
Okay, that's good to know.
The contractor has identified themselves to me. They're going to manage that widening.
Good.
But again, there's a lot of development going along that road as we sit here. So again, you need to manage the development and redevelopment. You can't turn it off.
Right.
You cannot deny people the use of their property. That's considered a taking, and there's too many court cases where jurisdictions have been held liable. So what we need to do is work with the development community, with property owners, to make sure we're getting the best as I would say, the best bang for the buck.
Okay.
Okay?
Now, talking about the redevelopment and the budget, now that the town center is online, a lot of it is filled in. Talk again about the TIF. So let's bring the TIF back up and let's remind people how this works.
Okay, TIFs, people need to understand about tax incentive financing. It is not a gift to the developer. What it is if I have a property that's generating $10,000 a year in revenue, and I provide a $2 million TIF, tax incentive financing, to the developer, the TIF will be paid back by the increase of the taxes over the $10,000. I will always get the $10,000 for a number of years. Usually it's 12 or 15 years.
Right.
For example, the $2 million TIF down at Conti Road, at that shopping center, is paid off. And Michelle has told me that we've generated a great deal more revenue in taxes than we initially were getting.
Okay.
So, but again, people need to understand, it is above what we're getting now that will be used to pay back the TIF. And anything, the payments it's a bond, so they're set. So if the original taxes were 10, the TIF is $5,000 a year, and we generated another 5,000 or 10,000 total in increased taxes, we get the 10,000 plus the 5,000. Okay, we agreed to a TIF with Town Center at Laurel. The TIF, as we do them in the city of Laurel, can only be used for infrastructure.
Okay.
For example, a parking garage is considered infrastructure. Increased roadways, increased adjacent roadways, bringing the water and sewer up to standard on the property. It cannot be used to build the brick and mortar places of business.
Right.
It can't be used for the developer to take a trip. It has to be used for infrastructure.
There are guidelines involved
Absolutely.
with this. Okay.
And that's managed. We have bond counsel that is involved in that. We have, of course, Michelle and her department managing that for us.
Thank goodness.
And making sure that it gets paid back timely. Now, somebody said, well, what if you don't generate the $5,000 in payment? The taxes didn't increase by 5. The developer's on the hook, not
Okay.
the city.
Good.
Not the city.
That's good to know.
So again, TIFs are a development tool. It's to spur the development in the direction we want it to go.
Managed.
Again, coming back to management.
There you go, yeah.
And but we're not taking anything away from the citizens as far as taxes. We're not giving it away.
Right.
What we're doing is we're improving the value of the property in the infrastructure, and more importantly, when it's paid off, then the increased tax revenues all come back to the city.
Right.
And I think that TIFs they're always controversial because people, somebody gets a hold of it and they sort of spin it and say, oh, they're giving money away.
Right.
Well, I wasn't getting the money anyways.
Right.
I'm not giving anything away. I'm doing something that will allow the developer. If the developer has a TIF and goes to a lender, they don't have the money usually.
Right.
Okay? The people that will give them the financing look at that TIF as an asset because they say, hey, the jurisdiction where this development is going to take place, they've got some skin in the game.
They're committing.
They're committing to support this, and that has value to the developer in negotiating with the banks.
So there you go.
Lenders.
That's why
Yep.
that's why a TIF helps. It
Right.
doesn't take money out of citizens' pockets, out of
Right.
our pocket. It
Right.
basically helps commit to this project.
That's correct, and it shows we're committed in the city along with the developer. We had to give them permission to do it.
Right.
Okay?
Now, let's change channels a little bit. Temperatures are starting to get warmer out there, thank goodness. We're all happy about that. We've got springtime coming up, which means we've got Earth Day and all those lovely projects that you are very involved in. Can you let our viewers know what's going to be happening this year with that?
Okay, well, of course, people will be using our parks, which is important.
Yes.
My grandson will want to go to all the playgrounds again, and he has a name for each one of them, you know. But let me just mention one of the assets we have, actually two assets we have in the city. We have Laurel Lakes.
Definitely.
There is a $1.5 million project underway up at the upper basin to clean all the silt out.
And people will be very happy to hear that.
Working with Mary Lehman, we were very lucky that she got some support from the council, and they put $3 million aside to improve water quality.
Okay, good.
You know, along that area. Okay, now we started with the Upper Lake. NZI is the contractor. Okay, they're doing half of it, and then they'll do half of it. They didn't empty the water flow. They didn't divert the water flow. It's still going through the lake there. The deer will end up without a place to go out in the middle of the lake. But more importantly, it'll act as upper basin. It's a stormwater management basin to collect silt, so it doesn't continue to roll into the lower basin.
Okay, good.
And there have been discussions. I recently sent a letter to Mary asking her to consider the possibility, if the money is still available of the $3 million, to do the lower basin. Now again, Mary's got a lot of things tugging at her in District 1.
Right.
But we'll see how that turns out, because what happens is what's in the lakes is not all dirt. It is what they call fine particles, clay particles, and I don't understand all of the hydrology, but
right.
A lot of it comes from the disruption that was done in the sand pits over the years, over a 50-year period.
Okay.
It gets into the water table, it comes up in the springs, and floats down. Those particles don't settle out. They just float in the water. Some of the residents have asked me, why don't we stock the lake? We can't get the state to stock the lower lake anymore because the fish don't live.
Right.
There's not enough
Oxygen in the...
It's the light that's the problem.
Oh, is it the light? Okay.
Well, the light, it's all tied together. Somebody said, why do you have those two fountains out there? Well, the fountains actually aerate the water. But those fine particles are floating in there. There's not a lot of grass on the bottom. So it's necessary that we try and get the lakes cleaned up, and hopefully we'll be able to improve the lower lake as a place for fish. Now, those particles roll over the spillway of the lower lake. They get in the Patuxent River, and they end up in the Chesapeake Bay.
Right.
The Patuxent River goes through 7 counties. And when it gets down to Pax River, it flows into the bay, and those particles contribute to what's happening in the middle of the bay. The middle third of the bay is dead.
Yeah.
Because if you look at maps on the state's website, you'll see that when they talk about what condition the bay's in, the middle third is dark. Things aren't growing there.
They're not growing, right.
The grasses aren't growing because the grasses need the light, and that means that the fish aren't in there and the crabs aren't in there, so it's all related. But there's a big effort, Patuxent River Commission, of which I'm the chair, there's a big effort to get the Patuxent River cleaned up, and there's all these rivers around the state. We want to get them cleaned up because if we can get them cleaned up, that will contribute to the health of the bay over time.
Right.
It took 250 years to get to where we are, so it isn't going to happen overnight.
Exactly.
Now that brings me to the river. We've had some storm events where they opened the floodgates.
And a lot of stuff came down river with it.
That's correct. They're what we call snags.
Snags.
Okay, the city, Marty Fleming was able to get an airplane to fly over and take pictures. I think they identified 30 or more snags from the face of the dam down to the bridge where the Fort Meade treatment plant is. There's a big one right there, you can see it.
Right.
The problem with snags like that is when you have another event and you let the water go, they dam up faster. The water doesn't flow.
Right.
It doesn't flood, but it doesn't flow.
Right.
So you get flooding moving further back upstream. WSSC, the city, our insurance company, and some of the businesses that were impacted are dealing with WSSC. They haven't come to a resolution yet because it is expensive to remove the snags.
Right.
And the city we don't have funds in our budget to do that. Neither does Anne Arundel County or Prince George's County or Howard County.
Right.
So again, but one thing you can say about getting away from the snag issue, and you can see a couple of them along the river. I think there's 5 down to the Legion.
Okay.
But getting away from the snag issue, the banks of the river tend to be relatively clean because every year there's a cleanup along the Patuxent River. It'll happen in April this year. The river keeper, Fred Tutman, has a coordinator. She is coordinating all the cleanup efforts along the river. Mike Leszcz coordinates the one for the city of Laurel.
Right.
We get a lot of volunteers come. They walk along the riverfront park. They pick up trash. And again, the citizens are doing a good job of trying to keep the trash out of the river.
That's
Because
good.
whatever gets in the river rolls down to the Chesapeake Bay, it ends up in the Chesapeake Bay, it ends up in the ocean.
Or it ends up in one of the snags, you know, and just makes
Yeah,
it worse.
yeah.
So,
And again, I mean, there's a lot of contributing trash. We used to see cars in the river.
and this is a great opportunity for school kids to get community service
That's
hours.
correct. If all they need to do, if you have a high school child, or even, I mean, the Hurricanes have shown up every year
Right.
that I've been involved. The
Right.
football team, those kids are getting their community hours in.
Yes, you always hear that name when in connection with one of these events.
Yes, and we do the same thing around Laurel Lakes too. So the riverfront park gets fairly well cleaned up. Across the river, people said, well, what about all that property across the river? That's Howard County property,
Right.
and that is parkland. And it's a non-developed piece of parkland. They bought up a large chunk of property 20 years, 25 years ago. So that won't be developed. There won't be houses built along
That's
the river
good.
on that
Okay.
side. Now coming to, so anyways, they get these participants, if they're of school age, they get their hours in. But you get a lot of adults that walk along the lake. They'll take a bag with them and pick up trash when they're just out walking
Well,
around.
it's their park, and that's what you like to see is they realize if they're going to be walking this park, let's help out, you know.
We don't have lighting along the park. We ask that people use the park during daylight hours for safety.
Right, dawn to dusk.
The city did a property swap a few years ago, and it still remains to be seen what we're going to do with the 77 acres of, and it's marshy, swampy land behind the
Where
Amish.
the Amish market is.
Yes. Now people have said, well, what? And I said that has a value in the system.
Right.
Things happen there that you know that we need to be aware of, and it adds to the water quality of what's rolling downstream. But again, there's some options there, and I'm sure that you know, as money becomes available over the next decade or so, we'll see something happen down there. Only a small amount of the 2 acres can we do anything on, and what you might see is, because we annexed that property into
Right.
the city, you might see some cooperative effort to provide a little more parking for Amish.
Oh,
I mean,
great.
that's what I'd like to see
Right.
around the back of the building. But again, it's very sensitive, that area. Water's brackish at certain times of the year, but it has value into the health of the river.
And you just got to think it through and see what can be done with it.
Yes.
Managed, again, managed, not just
That's
willy-nilly,
correct.
right?
And we don't have any, within the city, we don't have any sewer treatment plants
Right,
per se, but on the next Patuxent River up, Howard County, they do.
okay,
But it's interesting to see because Mary Kay Sigate, a councilwoman from Howard County Council, is my vice chair. They've developed a process for reusing the treated water that's coming out of the plant now as opposed to dumping it into the river. They're using it for cooling water at the ice cream plant. Those two buildings that everybody has asked me about, one at the Route 1 entrance to Laurel Park and the one down at the Fort Meade's water plant,
right,
they're pumping stations, and I believe they're going to pump that water coming out of the Howard County plant to Fort Meade, because you know there's a lot of building going on over at Fort Meade and
Yes.
requires a lot of cooling water.
right,
You don't just have the agency, you've got DISA over there now, you've got, they've taken one of the golf courses already, I don't know if they've taken the second one yet.
okay,
But again, there's a lot going on at Fort Meade in terms of what the results of BRAC.
right,
And they're our neighbors, so, you know, whatever we, and again, I didn't know what was happening with those two buildings till I asked, and then that we were told. So again, these are all environmentally friendly development efforts. That's the point I want to make,
good.
okay?
I mean, been a lot of great information you just gave us. Greatly appreciate you coming on. Is there anything that you wanted to else touch upon that's going on since you are the at-large, you basically cover the whole city. Anything else you can think of?
I just want to encourage our residents to help our police. If you see something that doesn't look right, pick up the phone. If it's an emergency, call 911 and ask for the Laurel Police, because you can go to Prince George's County and they might not roll you right over, but they'll put you right in touch. And tell the policeman, the only silly things that we report are the ones we don't report. I
Right.
mean that. And if it's not an emergency, but something just doesn't look right, call the non-emergency number for the Laurel Police. We've got 66 on duty right now. We're authorized 68. I think we're too short. These men and women of our police department work very hard to maintain a safe community. And the council's behind them. At my work, I got comments about the PR that was going on with the cameras, the body cameras.
The body cameras, yes.
Okay. And what people need to understand, we had Baltimore City Council down here twice to talk to the police department and council members and the mayor.
And I think one of our officers actually went up there and
Yes.
talked at their council meeting, didn't they?
Yes. And the police department and the city administration has gotten phone calls from all over, not just the United States, but they actually got
The world.
from the world. Now, there's a lot of controversy about cameras, but it protects citizens, it protects the police officers, and there's no question about what happened.
Right.
Okay? So that in fact, if something didn't go exactly how it should, then we have an opportunity to understand it and correct it. Our officers don't wear them on the bodies. They wear them on their heads.
Right.
Because it's whichever way they're facing.
It's eye level and it's
That's
going
correct.
exactly where
That's
they're
correct.
seeing.
The difficulty with the body cameras is you may turn your head because something's happening over here and you don't catch it on the
Right.
camera. And some other people have asked me about privacy. When they come to your house, an officer comes to your house, he will tell you that the camera is on. Is it okay if he leaves it on? And if you say no, he will turn it off in your house. If it's just, they're knocking on the door and it's,
Right.
there are some situations, anyways, they're knocking on your door and they want to talk to you, they'll turn it off.
If you don't want it on.
And also, if they do an auto stop, when they turn the camera on, when they get out of the car, there's 30 seconds before the audio starts.
Okay.
That gives them time to tell the individual in the car that they have a camera on and the audio will start in a few seconds. And you know what it does? It tends to lower the heat of the...
Well, it diffuses the situation,
yes,
doesn't it?
Yes. So, but again, the police, our men and women of our police department need all the help they can get. And don't jump into it, but call them.
And they can be reached. The non-emergency number is 301-498-0092. And the emergency phone number, if you want to call it instead of 911.
911, but when you get the operator, that goes down to a center down in the county. Just make sure, give me the Laurel Police Department.
Right.
And they'll connect you right away.
And the city has, I believe, an emergency number, 301
Yes, they do.
725-3000.
Yes, they do.
Yes.
But people, even my 5-year-old grandson knows
Can
about
dial 911,
Exactly.
exactly. Exactly.
Okay, so, but again, we are very fortunate to have a well-trained, well-equipped police department that maintains good order in the city here and provides for the peace and enjoyment. So that's the last thing I want to say.
And if anyone has any concerns or questions or comments, how can they reach you?
You can call me at home. I still have a landline.
Okay.
Okay, and I'm in the phone book, 301-776-3963. But I always tell people, don't call after 10 o'clock at night. We changed from 11 to 10 because my wife turns into a pumpkin. Okay, because we both still work. But if you have anything and there's no answer, you can leave a message, or you can call Kim Rao here at City Hall, 725-5300, and she'll take a message and she'll get in contact with me. I do not look at my city email during the day because I'm on a computer, but I don't have access to other email systems from that computer where I work.
And do you have a Twitter account?
I do, but you know, I'd rather they call me.
You'd rather talk to them in person?
Yes. We've all been set up with Twitter accounts here.
Right.
And I'm sure I get twitted, but I don't.
Right.
I'm sorry.
No, don't apologize. I mean,
I
I
would
like
prefer,
I like the personal.
I would
right.
prefer to talk to somebody or send me an email at mlez@laurel.maryland.us. I mean, I recently got something from somebody over in over behind the town center.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I couldn't answer the questions, but I did refer it immediately to the city administrator, and they're following up. They're very responsive. You can call me if you don't want it. If you see something that's bad or you don't like it, call me. I'll go ahead and report it. I'll go ahead and make the contact to the city. You also need to understand that in the case of, you know, somebody's got tall grass in their yard and they won't cut it, and you've got rodents running around there. If you call the city of Laurel and ask for code enforcement, you just tell them you want to be anonymous. They're not going to divulge how they found, you know, they went and they talked to that neighbor about their grass.
They don't want to create feuds where there doesn't need to be feuds.
That's
right.
not what we're in business to do. And we're not in business to give fines out. We're in business to get issues resolved. And that's important to know, too.
Good point.
Okay.
Thank you very much for coming on, sir.
It was a
Greatly
pleasure. Thanks.
Appreciate it. All right, lots of great information. So we had all the information. Make sure if you have any questions, get up with Honorable Les right now. He will be able to answer any questions or help you, okay? Well, thank you for tuning in to this edition of Council Connections with Honorable Michael Leszcz. Tune in next month. I don't know who we'll have on. It'll be a surprise, but we will enjoy bringing them to you, okay? Thanks. Have a good one.